Welcome to a brand new podcast. This is Everything with Everett, a podcast dedicated to hosting important conversations. Everything with Everett is hosted by Everett McConaughey from Boise, Idaho. Everett is an Idaho native who is ready to share his thoughts and observations on a wide variety of subjects. Politics, science, faith, religion, technology, and so much in between. How did we get here? What can we learn from each other? How can we put the past into a healthy conversation that helps us grow tomorrow? This is Everything with Everett, a conversation worth having. Hey everybody, welcome back to Everything with Everett, another week starting out in the wonderful saga of 2020. Every week something new happens that is like, seriously? This last week we lost the actor Chadwick, I forget his last name, who did the Black Panther story. Awesome guy, great actor, just really solid stuff. He had a battle with colon cancer, which apparently is now starting to show up in people at a younger age. He was 43 and died with stage 4 when they found it 4 years ago. So he'd been about 39. They found it at stage 3. It's very important to know where your health is. I think it's healthy to have baselines, and I feel like you look at like our health insurance, and they have the recommended screenings, like the colonoscopy at 55, and the colon cancer has been at 50, and they're dropping it down to 45. And obviously, if you know that there's a history of it in your family, then you should obviously advocate for more frequent screenings, even earlier than, what's normal, quote unquote, for somebody else. But I kind of feel like we're seeing scientifically that things that we thought were just like, oh, that's just part of old age. Like, you really don't need to even do anything until you're in your 40s. That kind of thinking is very antiquated. It feels like, I think that our diet is considerably different. Things that we have access to now are incredibly highly processed and not healthy. We have a ton of chemicals that have been created by large corporations that get into our food. They're very effective with what they're designed to help with, such as controlling bugs and crop yield. It's great. It's a great creation, but those things build up in our bodies and cause problems. Builds up in your body, doesn't know what the heck to do with it. And so it can store it into some fat. Like, hey, I've got this heavy metal here. We might need that later. So let's throw it in some fat. And then when you go to lose weight, or even if you don't lose weight, those substances sit in your body and then get secreted out when you do lose the weight, or just through your body cycling itself out. At some point it gets released. So it's kind of, like a little time capsule. And that's why it's so critical to have healthy, well thought out food throughout the beginning of life, because things that you could eat during critical development times of your life can come back to haunt you later on. So if if your family can't afford vegetables and you're eating macaroni every night and some hot dogs, that's not going to lead to the most healthy body. and can kind of exacerbate these problems. So, irregardless, very sad loss. Totally amazing how he just kept it quiet for 4 years. No one knew. People he worked with had no idea. Yet he went and acted like nothing was wrong. Showed up for all the roles. Did several movies. Just shrugged it off. Lived his life. He did a lot to be in the spotlight, but maintain a lot of privacy. And I think that's truly admirable for somebody who, like, you look at our current culture of who's who in the Hollywood arena, and there's a lot of people, that have the stardom and the paparazzi following them, trying to get the latest tabloid stuff. So definitely advocate in that opening to take care of yourself. I know that some tests cost a lot of money, but I'm of the mindset that I would rather pay for the test unnecessarily just to check something out, get a baseline, and then So then you know what's normal for your body. And then when it's time to do some more screening based on age or whatever else, then you can go back and your doctor can be like, oh, wait, it's elevated now. Maybe it's within a normal range scientifically, like, with all the other people in the nation. Maybe what's normal for other people actually is elevated for you. And I think that I wish that our health insurance companies would advocate baseline testing every 5 years. Just do a whole battery of tests and find out where you are. And maybe if they lowered it down and, advocated for that, we'd have a lot less health problems. There'd be a lot less terminal first diagnosis. People would probably live longer. But also, just because you do some testing, I mean, you could pass a test, and then within that time span of between your then and your next test, you could develop something. It could be way aggressive, and you'll never. I mean, it's not truly equal. Just because you test frequently doesn't mean you're going to necessarily catch something in time to alter, prevent, or stop it. So moving on, there's other less than fun things going on in this world, as you know. This week, I honestly kind of was up until about 2 hours ago. I didn't really know if this podcast was going to happen this week. Just going on a lot of stuff with my own personal life, in the middle of getting ready, like packing, going to be moving at the end of the month. My computers are everything's old. I literally, the two computers that are the most functional, I bought them in 2010 and 2011 or 12. So they're at least a decade old. And they're showing it. I mean, they work for the basic stuff, but they take forever to load. And I just ordered a brand new computer, custom built for this podcast and my future needs. It's going to be it's a good investment for the future. I'm going to have 2 monitors at home. It's going to be so exciting. I have literally been living off of a 19-inch square. Remember those? 19-inch square LCD monitor that my sister Selena gave me back in 2008. It was a surplus one that they had from their house. I think they upgraded to that. Was back in the day, like all the monitors were square, the old CRT monitors, and then they made the LCDs, and then they started coming out with widescreens. Well, what was widescreen back then, which is different than today, but anyway, technology has come a long way, and I just have to admit that I'm kind of stuck a decade ago. But everything's going to get better once we hit in October. I'm literally going to be able to do everything that I want with this podcast: video, audio from the computer, recording into the computer, plus the hotkeys on my new console. it's taken a lot of time to put this all together, but I truthfully wanted something that I could be proud of, that I would want my name attached to from day one as close as I could. And hopefully that's come across. I hope that every podcast sounds a little bit better, gets laid out a little bit better, just sounds a lot cleaner and tighter with every episode. Obviously, I need to, work on figuring out what I want to talk about. And, it'd be nice to get some guests, but I've tried getting guests, but nobody really wants to commit to coming in, especially with the COVID stuff. Where I'm at now, my apartment, I don't really have a place to host anybody. I will be having my own office studio at the next place, so that will be more of a ability. So I don't fault that, but I do have the ability to do like phone interviews. I mean, I could totally do something over the phone with somebody. There wouldn't be any live video if it was a live recording like that, but I could pre-record something and then play it back and then include it in the podcast. But anyway, so on Facebook this week, I saw a friend of mine posted a picture of a hand that had like some handwritten pen stuff on it. It says, "Thank you, Grace, hearts, love, give, yes, please, peace. I see," and then it's cut off. That maybe says, "I see you, hope, love all." Anyway, just really kind of cool, like this nice handwriting. And then in the middle of the hand is a piece of paper with some more writing on it. And it says, "If the words you spoke appeared on your skin, would you still be beautiful?" I'll read that again. "If the words you spoke appeared on your skin, would you still be beautiful?" And it reminds me of a former coworker and friend. His mom is, I forget what, it might be Bosnian. They're Bosnian. They came from, with the wars that they had in the 90s. They fled that country to come here to help my friend have a better life. And apparently one day he would just, be hanging out with the dudes and being a guy and doing the typical thing that people do. And he dropped a swear word. I don't remember what it was, but he used a word that was somewhat appropriate for the whatever was going on. But he said, I remember he shared on Facebook a few years ago, he said his mom said, "Why do you have to be so ugly?" And she wasn't commenting on like appearances. She was commenting that it was such an ugly word. And I feel like you look back at like literature and the way people wrote letters back in the day, we've lost a lot of tactful, elegant language. I should have my sister come on and talk about that. That'd be really cool. Because she's got a major in English. But we've lost, I feel like everything's been dumbed down to like quick phrases that communicate frustration, communicate anger, but they're not as well placed like a jewel or pointed like a spear. Don't fly through the air. Just like you look back at some of the things that people that ran for Congress or wrote letters to their senator, the way they wrote and talked, just they could throw you under the bus and read you the riot act without ever saying anything that was demeaning or belittling. Just very tactful and educated, which is mind-blowing because a lot of these people, like, they didn't have a formal education like we would recognize today. They just knew how to talk and use very well-crafted words. Anyway, so that's something that, out of all the words that you're using, if that was to be printed onto your body, would you still be beautiful? I think that's a very good question for people to consider. Another thing that I saw that kind of made me start thinking, like, oh, I'll admit, I've been on a bit of a soapbox a couple of times on these podcast episodes. There are things that I'm very passionate about. I'm definitely of the more liberal mindset, if you couldn't tell. But I don't want this podcast to ever be like a blue flag of liberalism just flying all the time. I welcome conversations from both people. So I try to personally see things from both sides. Whether or not I agree with them from the other side, that's a whole nother issue. And that's for me personally. But I try to humanize why we're in with the situation that we're in. So I was thinking about like how as people have run for elected office, you know, they'll call out the vote history and be like, "Oh, you say you're pro this, but you voted against it in the 90s." And I feel like while that is true, that is a fact, it can also it I don't know, like I watched this documentary, not a documentary, it was Dateline with Lester Holt. And he went and spent time in Angola prison. And there were several criminals that he was hanging out with. They committed murders. They did massive crimes back when they were children. And they were tried as an adult. They've been in prison for like 60 years, one of the people he talked to was at. And the guy was like, so much has changed outside. I have changed. I am not the same person I was in here. At the same time, you have like the fact that, you know, yes, this person killed a cop, and which is bad. But then you start hearing more of the details, and, you know, the cop was in plain clothing. But I mean, it's not good to take a life, obviously, and to take out a cop is not good. But then I started like thinking about it, like, you know, I would think, and they kept denying this guy his parole. And it was just kind of eye-opening that this person was clearly very different than he used to be, kept getting denied the parole. And I don't believe that he killed this person knowing, hey, it's a cop. He was startled because he was being confronted in the process of another crime and shot the person. The person wasn't wearing a uniform, so it wasn't like it was an act of aggression, like, oh, I got to kill you because I want to get away. Nothing like that from what I understood. And I think that we are, as a society, are a bit too rigid and cold hearted on some things. We do need to have standards, but at what cost? Like if someone takes a life, what kind of scum are we to make them sit and rot in a prison for 60 years? Should they do time? Yes. Should we throw their life away and make them suffer in prison for the rest of their life? Highly debatable. Anyway, so going on that, like thinking about like what people do in their younger years, and then as they get old and they learn things and maybe their mindset changes. Quote that a friend of mine on Facebook shared that I really found inspirational. I was like, whoa, like we've all done this. It says, everyone makes a hypocrite of themselves at some point along the journey. You can't grow without old habits clashing with new beliefs and values and understandings. Forgive yourself. So I think it's important that we just, no matter where we are in life, we need to be slow to speak and just listen, analyze things. Because I think we're too quick to be on the record about something, and then we get kind of hosed with what's going on. Moving on, I heard a speech from Charlie Chaplin, on a commercial of all things. I forget what the commercial was for, but I was like, wow, good. It's a speech from the Great Dictator from 1940. It literally sounds like it could apply today. I listen to so many things from the past, and it's like that could apply today. On one hand, we have come a long ways, and on the other hand, it's like when something could apply from or it sounds like it was being spoken today about today. It's like, are we making any progress? Anyway, this is a great. I don't know if it was truly just like how he felt about a subject, or if it was a great script for the movie. Probably a little bit of both. Anyway, an excellent speech that I'd like to share with you. Please stop whatever you're doing. If you're doing some multitasking, just listen to these words and embrace them. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Incredibly, obviously it fit for the era of that, World War II, Hitler and all that stuff. But it just seems so appropriate for today too. Like there is still suffering. There are people that are trying to build a United States of America for themselves that isn't for we the people. And I feel, a lot of it was true back then, but I feel like more now so than ever. We're at the fork in the road on where America goes. And it's kind of sad to see that, Anyway, who knows? That's the wonderful world of 2020, and the rose-colored glasses have definitely fallen off and hit the ground and shattered, which is a good thing. Anyway, that is my contribution to your listening pleasure for this week. If you have any questions or would like to learn more information about the podcast, go to everettmcconaughey.com/podcast. And McConaughey is spelled McConaughey. Everett is Everett. So everettmcconaughey.com/podcast. Also, if you'd like to weigh in on any subject, 208-391-2808. Call, leave a message, or send a text message. It goes straight to voicemail, so don't worry about your time zone or when you call. Be happy to feature you in an upcoming podcast. Also, I'm working on a podcast for the end of the month. The week that I move, it will be incredibly hard to record and then upload a podcast due to when the internet gets all moved over. So I would like to have a listener contribution podcast by the end of the month. What are your thoughts on the year? What are your feelings about 2020? What are your thoughts about the state of the world? What are your fears? What are your hopes? What do you want to talk about? 208-391-2808. Leave a message with your name and location and what your thoughts are, and I'd be happy to include you in a future podcast. Thank you for the privilege of letting me grace your ears wherever you are, at home, at work, in the gym, or falling asleep. Apparently I have a soothing voice. Look forward to meeting you again in our little moment, our space, wherever that is. Hope you have a great week, and thank you for the privilege and honor of your time and listening. Have a great week. You can join the conversation anytime. Call or text 208-391-2808. Also, you can connect on Twitter. Look for @EverettPodcast. Listen to all available episodes of Everything with Everett, as well as find out where to subscribe. More information at everettmcconaughey.com/podcast.